welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, I hope you are having a great morning. If not, drink some coffee. It'll make you feel better. Anyway, so I'm being joined this morning by Mr. Maxlon Roberts, who is a farmer and an agro-processor on the island here. And we are talking about what's going on at TADCO, whether it's just a dismissal, outright dismissal process, or they are really restructuring. And he has quite a few thoughts on what's been going on as somebody who is not just a farmer, but who has actually studied quite a lot about, farming and so on, and on all the business around farming. So a special good morning and welcome to you, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning, Kandace. Good morning to Tobago. Good morning to all the viewers on the various platforms. It's always a pleasure being in studio, always a pleasure speaking to the issues, particularly as it relates to agriculture, because that is my field.
So first of all, let's just get into it with TADCO. TADCO says that this is not even a restructuring. They say it's a new direction in the way that they are going. They are realigning the workers to various positions, making sure, because some of them have elevated their educational capacity, want to make sure that they are getting what they deserve to be getting based on their improvements, making sure that they are in the right positions to be the most productive in the company. Do you believe that?
That is very interesting, and because I was a part of the sister company to TADCO, a sister company to TADCO Reforestation. TADCO and Tobago Reforestation got the same mandate at the same time to do the restructuring, right? I'm fully aware because my accounts administrative assistant was a part of the board of TADCO, and we worked together. So when we heard that TADCO is restructuring, well, let me give you my experience on reforestation, because as I indicated, they gave the same mandate. They were given the same mandate because they report to the same line secretary. Coming out of our restructuring, the same manpower audit was the same concept used to do a manpower audit to find out what is added deficiencies, indicating to people that they won't be displaced, they will be reassigned and all of that. That was our audit ended, well, the final aspect of it and the new restructuring, the new org chart structure, came into effect July, at the end of July. And as of the end of July, I am no longer employed with reforestation. So that concept and those statements, I see the same thing happening at TADCO because I've been through it and nobody can challenge my experience. So I am out of a job, as well as my accounts administrative assistant is now out of a job because of that restructuring. And notwithstanding all the promises that persons won't be disenfranchised, persons will be reassigned, they will open up for advertisement, which they did. They advertised it internally, we applied. It has nothing to do with, you see, the thing is that you have to go beyond the reapplication. After you reapply, what happens? Because we applied, we reapplied.
Do you get any response?
No, and that's the point I'm making till the present moment. So the same I'm seeing the same trend happening at TADCO. And that is, so I'm speaking from my experience with reforestation, knowing that both companies got the same mandate from the same line secretary. So we hope that TADCO persons, because they are much more disenfranchised than we are, and in the situation that exists, doesn't actually end up like us, where you're 2 months now going on 3 months without employment.
So what advice now? I mean, what have you spoken? Let me put it this way. Have you spoken to the workers of TADCO? Have you been able to be in a position now to, I don't know, give them any advice as they're going through the situation where they are not sure? Well, I mean, we have on one hand TADCO and the secretary stating that there is a very good chance that they would all be rehired.
But we were given the same assurance, and we're still unemployed. So I guess because reforestation was much smaller in number, it didn't have so much of media coverage and stuff like that. So because of the pressure being applied from the media houses, from the different persons, they may have to now take the serious steps to actually ensure that what they're saying does happen. I tend to ascribe to the philosophy, hope deferred make the heart sick. So don't sit and just hope. Position yourself in the event that that doesn't happen. All right? Because I'm talking from my experience. So I transitioned from that seamlessly and have gone into doing my maximizing my business, doing the necessaries to ensure that I'm still surviving. It's not as easy as it used to be, but I'm here doing what I have to do.
Will you consider putting your application in for TADCO, especially noting your qualifications and your training and so on?
Well, we saw something came out indicating that the positions, but then we saw that was retracted.
Yes.
So once it probably, because they say it's open for everyone, I'm sure, because my master's is in food safety and quality assurance, and I think TADCO with their whole processing facilities and where the new direction is going, they can use my expertise there as well.
And as we're talking about this new direction, I mean, I know you've been paying attention to these conversations quite a lot as someone who wants to do a lot in this space, right? What are your opinions? I mean, how do you view this new direction? Is this something that you have confidence in?
I have to say no, and the reason why, because of how the approach is being done in terms of the models they're using. And we were having a conversation off air regarding the contract farming, right? The poultry initiative, the pilot project. Now, I've done contract farming for Master Mix, which is a big feed company in Trinidad, because before I came to Tobago, I managed a farm in Las Lomas, a 26-acre farm, and we had several contract pens. That area was set up to do contract farming. And our experience was that it is very difficult. What they're actually doing is hiring labor smartly. They're getting free labor. So it was very difficult for us to make a profit. We used to run pens. We had 4 pens carrying on average 10,000 birds. And it was very difficult for us to make a profit because the model was wrong. And that was years ago. That was like 10, 15 years ago. So I am aware that that model doesn't work. I've lived through it. And so based on the approach they're taking in terms of adopting models, and they spoke about, well, that's the division of the mega farms and all of that. Those models have been tested. So are we doing the necessary research to ascertain where the models fall down? Because you see, poultry farming is a very intricate and concise discipline. So that model of giving farmers feed, giving them it sounds nice, but it doesn't work out in the best interest because we're not trained sufficiently to ensure that it works. We're not using the technology. So what had happened with our situations, we changed the model and went to a model known as tunnel ventilation systems, which is what we're supposed to be looking at, because that old model did not work. And the solution to it was to go to a tunnel ventilation system model that brings the actual reward, but that requires a lot more investment, it requires a lot more skill, it requires a lot more training.
And do you think that at the division, the TADCO, the technocrats there that are there now, that they are thinking in that direction?
They haven't mentioned anything of that sort, so I can't say that. If they were thinking of that, you would have heard the concept of tunnel ventilation systems come up, because it's a different method, it's a different approach. It's a place where you have it's a bit more costly, but that cost eventually you have the ability to now get your birds at an earlier time, have them consume a little less feed because of the conditions under which they are. So those factors allow you to actually come out more profitable. So, and I haven't heard anything regarding tunnel ventilation systems in the whole model. They're just saying get farmers to extend their pens and all of these things, and that model wouldn't work. So I know it wouldn't work.
And then what about in terms of some of the other initiatives, like the other agro-processing initiatives that they have been engaging?
So take for the instance, the composite flour, that's an excellent idea, because we must find some alternative to wheat flour, because we don't grow wheat. However, it is very expensive to do composite flour, meaning the dashi, cassava, sweet potatoes, these types of flour, because we don't have the volume required. So if you're not in, once you increase volume, your unit cost goes down. It's something known as variable cost. So once, but I'm not seeing actual farming taking place, indicating to me that the raw materials to make these composite flour, I'm not seeing that. So it means you can't get the composite flour without growing the commodities. Or I don't know if they have a plan to purchase the commodities from external. It might be cheaper, but we don't know. But that is a very efficient way, because if we have to go that way, if we have to keep these commodities, have them available, readily available, we have to have them in a storable form because they're perishable. And one of the best storable form is in flour. You can, once you go through that process, flours can store for quite some time. And those are efforts towards attaining food security and food sovereignty. So that is a good idea. But what are we actually going to do? Are we going to grow the commodities to be converted to these? Are we going to buy the commodities to be converted to these? If we're going to grow the commodities in these mega farm type systems and stuff like that, I am not seeing any steps towards accomplishing that. Because if I have to do composite flour with dasheen, I need a minimum of 6 months of growing period before I can actually get a dasheen to harvest. If it's bananas, at a minimum for a year before I can actually get the product. So those inputs, those infrastructures need to go in now, so that in a year's time, 6 months time, 8 months time, I can say I expect this amount of volume coming out, so I can now convert to the composite flour. So the idea is a good one, because we need to start to wean ourselves off of this wheat flour, because we've been through that kind of crisis and we know what is the possibility. We have the challenge of having the gluten part of the flour, meaning that part that allows it to bind, but there are technologies that can treat with that, and you don't necessarily always just have to make breads. Composite flour can do well in making cakes and biscuits and pastas and these kind of things. So we have to look at along those lines to really make the things efficient.
But I mean, coming back also to this whole idea of, these contracts are coming to an end, so now you have to reapply as a worker for either your position or some other position within there. Now, when we are talking about getting our agriculture sector up to that place where we can start to really have some form of food security here in Tobago, do you think that that would work?
What the
restructure? Well, okay, I don't know how to say if it's restructuring, because I mean, TADCO
it's a
branded it as a new direction. So I'm using their words. It's a new direction in terms of how they're going. Do you think that process would result in us seeing a difference in how we structure our food security here in Tobago?
That's a very good question. Because, well, I don't know what is the exact mandate, right? I've heard of and I've indicated what is my thoughts on. I've heard of the contract farming, I heard of the new direction, but I don't know if their mandate is to go to the place of accomplishing food security and food sovereignty. I highly doubt that is the mandate, the direct mandate. So it doesn't matter if you restructure. What you're supposed to do is use who you have and train them accordingly to satisfy the requirements of your mandate. If you realize I don't have what I need, I could train, or I could, I guess, hire new persons. But I don't think just a restructuring would facilitate that, because it's more than just I need to stop using the word restructure. What is it? A new direction. I don't think a new direction is not. It has nothing to do with really a new direction. It deals with what is the policy decision that you have made regarding food security. If I can see the policy decision and what informs me as from a layman, the policy decision is based on what I've seen in the budget, right? Because we've presented our budget. And when I've looked at what I've seen in the budget as it pertains to agriculture, food security, I see some aspect of training, but I'm not seeing the position where, or the place where I'm seeing tangible steps, the right tangible steps being taken to actually see or secure food security. I'm not seeing what is required. because I have this philosophy, we teach to the clarity of our examples. Words don't teach, it's life experiences that teaches, especially in agriculture. You have to physically exemplify how you're going to accomplish, because it can be measured. Agriculture is a thing that is very measurable. You can measure output. So if I say my food import bill is 1 billion, I am taking steps to reduce that by 1% for every quarter. Now, that is something I can measure over time, and I hold you accountable. But once we don't approach it like that, saying a restructuring and a new mandate is going to aid in accomplishing food security, that's just nice structured words, right? In my opinion, my humble opinion. But once I'm not seeing tangible outputs that I can measure over time, then I'm not convinced.
No, and as you mentioned that point, I mean, I go back to the poultry initiative that's been quite a heart of our discussions lately, and there is that target of being able to produce 250 chickens per month for consumption, because that's what the data that they gathered informed us that that's our basic consumption rate. Now, again,
250 chickens per month.
1,000. Sorry, 250,000. Sorry, right? Now, do you think that the way that they have structured this initiative is going to be able to produce that amount within? I think it would say that within a year's time.
Oh, yeah.
Are you confident that that is
If it's a year, that's a very small part, but because it's spanned over a year, it definitely can be accomplished. 250,000 pounds of birds we consume as a population monthly. That's quite a feat. But so 250,000 pounds of birds per month for the next 12 months, right? That's what we're looking at. Because that's what we have to accomplish. Because
yes, try to get to that point in a year's time.
Right? Oh, yes. Try to get to 250,000 pounds per month yearly, and in a year's time. Yeah, that could be accomplished. The model wouldn't allow us to accomplish it though, because we're gonna have what is gonna happen over time. Your mortality is gonna mortality rates and stuff like that will eventually come into play. Diseases are going to come into play because we're now introducing a new type of system that wasn't here before. So there are always contingencies. There need to be certain contingencies to be put in place to facilitate or to allow us to be able to accomplish that target. But it's a reasonable target. I must say it's achievable.
Now, I mean, earlier in the conversation, you touched on the idea of mega farms, and and then even before we came on, we talked about the struggles of Tobago being able to produce produce on a commercial scale. And I want you to talk a little bit to that, and the fact that there's so much of us of our farmers that are still treating it like a hobby, and our systems are not in place to even encourage the commercial aspect of it.
Exactly. And the reason there are two main factors that contribute to that. The necessary infrastructure aren't in place just yet, right? Because where I farm, all this talk I talk about farming, I don't have access to irrigation. I depend on the rain system, or I've got water connection, but it doesn't work because the distance doesn't allow me to get the actual water. So the infrastructures that would assist or aid persons to increase productions are still lacking in some areas. And where I farm in Lowido is one of the main farming communities or main farming areas. The lands there are one of the most fertile on the island. So it's a good area to do farming. But where the farmlands are, the infrastructure, the basic infrastructure, you can't farm without water. The basic infrastructures aren't in place. So that is a discouragement. This, notwithstanding my efforts to encourage persons, but when I encourage them and then they end up doing something, trying to catch the rainy season and this on and off, because that dry period proved challenging to me. It caused my production to drop significantly. So those factors need to be sorted out to allow farmers to be encouraged, one. And secondly, that approach that we have and that thinking that we have that anybody can farm needs to change. We have to approach the discipline from a scientific standpoint because it's a science. And secondly, we have to approach it from a business standpoint because it's a business. So this idea that we can just throw two plants in the back of our yard or we can just try our hand. No, it doesn't work like that. You need to do research. You need to understand the discipline as a science, and you need to understand market and economics as you treat with the discipline as a business. Because if you don't appreciate the concepts of marketing, of entrepreneurship, that's why I brand myself as an agro entrepreneur, not a farmer, because there's a distinction, there's a transition. When you move from the way that transition from thinking as though, let me just try doing some lettuce without doing any market research to know if lettuce would be in season or out of season. When I just throw stuff and guess at it, I'm setting myself up to the fluctuations of the market. So once you've gotten the training, once you've done your market research, once you've done the necessaries, and you approach the discipline from that standpoint, then we can say we're ready to move systematically to a place of where the farmers expand their production. But it requires a lot more work because the methods and the way we do it, this traditional way we approach farming, is not going to get us anywhere close to food security anywhere soon.
All right. Well, unfortunately, Mr. Roberts, I think we're at the end of our conversation. We are out of time, but I want to thank you so much for being on for what was quite an insightful conversation. And yeah, we should have you on for a bit more.
Definitely. Do look forward to always coming back, and Tobago, have a blessed day. Looking forward to keeping in touch.
All right. Well, viewers, that's it for the program this morning. But I want to thank you so much for joining us, and do have a safe and wonderful day, and we'll see you again tomorrow.